Hi, everyone. It's really an honor to be with you. I love these GICP convenings. I've been lucky to receive so much support and confidence building and tools and resources from this particular group of folks. And so I'm anxious, nervous to share with you all where we are in our process, because I hope to reciprocate some of the ways that you've all fed us in our work. So sharing that we, Creators Rebuild New York, we don't have big outcomes to present. We're midway through our process, but I hope what we have to share will offer perhaps some inspiration, perhaps some new reasons for us to be connecting together now and in the future and more. So I'm going to share some slides with you all. Hopefully this works. I don't know how many times I've done Zoom and somehow still 50% of the time it doesn't really work. So hopefully you're seeing a big, in your screen is a sort of a neutral color with big text on top. Awesome. So awkward to hear. Has anyone ever heard their bio read out loud? Super awkward. I did do all those things, and I'm also feel absolutely like a regular person, just hopefully trying to commit lucky to have the opportunity to commit my work life to things that I
own your accomplishments, Maura. Own
yeah, well, here we are. I'll do my best. So I actually want to start in a slightly different place to center this conversation, this presentation. And I want to start with a poem. This is Lucille Clifton, who is a really important in the tradition of Black women poets. Lucille Clifton passed away some years ago, but was raised in Buffalo, New York. This poem's called Love Rejected. Love rejected hurts so much more than love rejecting. They act like they don't love their country. No, what it is they found out their country don't love them. So again, that's Lucille Clifton. And I wanted to start here because I think maybe all of us know, certainly I hold and cherish, that artists and culture bearers do important work. They are embedded in our communities, not separate from. They do things like make very clear and poignant, uncomfortable truths like this one. I think what Aisha is calling us, reminding us, centering some disasters that are currently many of our neighbors and countrymen are facing, are rooted in racism and systems that don't work for us. Lucille Clifton in this poem, I think, brings a light on that. Artists make work, do work, are not always loved in the process of their working and creating, and are also folks who experience the precarity, of these systems that aren't working for us. So with that, I'll just move on to more of the standard presentation stuff. Creators Rebuild New York. We are a 3-year investment into the financial stability of artists in New York State. I want to emphasize that we're a statewide program. And while we're both operating a guaranteed income program for artists, we're also implementing an employment program for 300 artists who are in collaboration with over 99 organizations all across New York State. We also have this third leg of work about impact and narrative change, which is exciting. And I imagine, particularly for the many folks in this space and in the GICP space who are thinking about how do we move from pilot to policy. With 3 years, we have an opportunity, we feel, to do something really big and important, and of course, support artists in real time, and also hopefully make sense, make some meaning from that work. Ultimately, our goal is that artists are better supported both inside the arts and culture ecosystem, but also outside the arts and culture ecosystem. I'd also lift up that because we're funded by philanthropy, the Mellon Foundation, Ford Foundation, and Stavros Niarchos Foundation answered the call of artists and workers who said we needed different ways to be supported, and committed this funding to this initiative. And with that in mind, CRNY, we're able to work in a values-based way, So we're able to say that in our work, we're going to confront racial and wealth inequities in all of the programming that we do and everything that we're thinking about. We can prioritize caring support for our participants. We can think about worker solidarity. We can talk about reparations in the context of our work. And we can invite and challenge and hopefully reimagine existing systems. So specifically about the guaranteed income, our guaranteed income program for artists, I'm going to go into some of the basic details of our program that probably align with a lot of the ways y'all are all working, and we've learned from you, and hope to make sure that our program fits into what is understood as a guaranteed income demonstration. And then after I go into some of those details, I'll dive into 3 specific features of our program that have some nuance and maybe open up space for conversation about how we do this narrative change work. So the bare bones are that our program is supporting 2,400 artists, again, all across New York State, with $1,000 cash payments for 18 consecutive months. The full outcome statistics, who all those 2,400 artists are, will be released. We're going to do an exciting press announcement at the end of October. We are in that special spot that a lot of you have can commiserate with me, where we're implementing, right? We're in the waves of making sure everyone gets paid, everyone has what they need, and that we're communicating well and finding, meeting people's access needs and preventing access barriers, et cetera. A couple of other bits that I think are useful to ground us in what this program is. We made the eligibility purposefully simple. There's not sort of a set known list of who are all the artists in New York State who have need right now, right? There's lots of organizations that support artists. There's museums and there's theaters, there's local arts councils, there's quilting groups, there's choirs, there's also, the artists exist in lots of different forms and are connected to organizations in different ways. And so in order for us to meet all of the artists who are connected to the system or not connected to the system, we wanted to make our eligibility relatively simple so that we could hear from all of them and hopefully support as many as possible. So of course, folks needed to live in New York State, have financial need, and then be an artist, culture bearer, culture maker. Maybe some folks wonder how we got to that definition. Painstakingly, I'll tell you that, and I'm happy to share more about how we worked with a think tank, for example, how we co-designed our process with artists in mind at the very beginning to come up with this eligibility to begin with. A couple of other things I'd note is that we had an open call, right, application that was open for several weeks alongside our other program, the Artist Employment Program. And we had a really concerted outreach effort. We use the word outreach rather than recruitment to align with the ways we're thinking about participatory research, et cetera. We had over 22,000 people apply all across New York State to this program, which I think showcases the tremendous need, right? And the inadequacy of the infrastructure that exists for folks, period, but for artists as well. Similar to lots of other programs, we landed our selection process. It really needed to be randomized. This is maybe not unique, but interesting for our program and for programs that target populations based on vocation, like artistic practice or otherwise. Merit-based, the word merit was central, was one of the words we were trying to abolish in our selection process, right? That folks were going to be selected at random because they were deserving, period, not because one artist is better than another artist. We know that a lot of arts ecosystems, unfortunately, are subjective and therefore culpable of the same isms, right, that people face point blank, period, in trying to make a living and do their work. We aimed to reach artists who are deeply rooted in and reflective of the populations that we know face systemic barriers to financial security. With private funds, we were able to make the case to prioritize in a way that supported that value. So I'll talk about that a bit later. But we did both do tremendous efforts to reach Black, Indigenous, and folks of color all across New York State, to deaf and disabled artists, to queer artists, to artists who share an immigrant experience, to artists who are coming out of prison, to artists who are in rural parts of the state as well. So we both made a concerted effort to make sure those artists were represented and applied, and then also prioritize them in the selection process. This is the slide that I hope you will all put your email in the chat if you want to talk to me about these things, because I could drag on forever. But there's some details about the implementation of our work that I'm still teasing through and I think are interesting and could be I think there's things I have to learn still, and I imagine you all have a lot that you've learned to share as well. One feature of our program is that we really wanted to co-design. We wanted to, and we did co-design the entire program before officially opening applications. We held a think tank. We convened a think tank of artists, of practitioners, of policymakers in the workforce development space for the employment program, as well as in the guaranteed income space. And ask them, what is it that artists need? From your point of view as an artist who faces all of these things, right? What's the best way for us to implement and roll out this program? So there's lots about co-designing with community, which is my background and things I really care about that we centered in this program. How do you balance due diligence with trust-based principles? I want to talk to you all about verification. There's lots and lots in the weeds, and I'm curious where folks are landing and learning from how to do this well and how to do this in a way that doesn't place burden on folks. And by do this well, I mean implement guaranteed income well in a way that serves people that trust them, right, and gets them cash quickly. And then finally, just direct support. I think I'll talk a little bit about this in a moment, but thinking about the difference between supporting a few hundred folks and a few thousand was significant. We were grateful and excited to partner with benefits counseling providers, operating that at scale, right? And thinking of their caseload as something to talk about. And then lastly, I just have things to talk about and share with around how we consider the frame of our roles in this work as administrators, as program managers, as directors. How do we shift? I'm curious and would like to think about how we shift that role and that perspective from program management to care work, how we're offering care, right, and support to our folks. So with the three things I want to talk about in our program, artists, quite different. We're not the only artist focused program, but we certainly have a lot of artists in our program, significantly more. Two, I want to talk about scale statewide to more than 2,000, right, participants. And then three, I want to talk about impact and narrative change. So first things first, artists, I want to hope that you will share, I can influence you all to believe that some of the things that I know to be true from my experience as someone who's been part of an art collective, who's experienced the tremendous work of a lot of artists, that artists really are part of an ancestral lineage, right, of holding our culture, of understanding our culture, of imagining, right, of making way for new things, and bringing uncertain truths to our attention. So I think our program focuses on artists because if we all think about what Lucille Clifton is saying in that poem, that we are all deserving, right? If sort of a Black feminist principle of love at the center, artists are also part of that story. Artists are all the things, right? They're embedded, they're parents, they're caregivers, they're immigrants, they're deserving of guaranteed income, like all. There's this, I think, a really tremendous artist, Camila Janan Rashid, who does this, has made these public artworks. I think a lot of us have music we cherish, have music maybe we don't cherish, the ABCs, for example. There are others that we do cherish. Literature that we cherish, dance that we love to view. Artists also do things like bring critical awareness using the tools that they have, like language, like satire, like printmaking. Camila Janan Rashid, I think this was in a storefront in Brooklyn for a number of months a few years ago, really drives home in these panels the real irony of the narrative around what it is to be a poor person in this country. Artists are just one kind of worker who help us translate this experience. And if I can't convince you with Camila Janan Rashid, I can also share that artists are in community, like I mentioned before, right? They face precarities like lots of other workers, like all people. A couple of statistics, in 2020, New York City lost 72% of its performing arts jobs, which was more than any other industry. In New York State, that's data point was 50%, so half, is deeply significant. Of course, this is just 2020 information that's wobbled and shifted. And it's also true that the artists who are Black, who are Indigenous, who are folks of color, who are disabled suffered even more greatly, and the data around that isn't fully captured. So there's a lot we have to learn and to understand about how artists do their life under precarious conditions. In our 22,000 folks who applied, 95% of applicants reported not having a financial safety net. So contrary to some beliefs, most artists are not like Beyonce, right? They do not have billions and billions in the bank. For us, financial safety net referred to folks identifying as not knowing when they will make income again, were vulnerable to a medical emergency, had unmanageable debt, had no savings, assets, or family resources, among some other things. In addition, not different from other populations, over 35% of folks who applied to this program reported that they currently receive public benefits. Another way of thinking of showcasing how artists are in community is I just wanted to showcase in these bullet points, right? This is the group of people, both the community conditions as well as the identities and life experience who we prioritize in our selection. And I know for a fact that all of you are doing brilliant work centering just these kinds of folks. So it's very likely that artists are also folks who are in other programs who can benefit from this kind of economic intervention. And then my mouse is getting sticky. And then hopefully another compelling piece of evidence, artists do impact community. And I'm not just the fun stuff I have to say in snippets, I believe anecdotally, but there's research to back it up. So this is a screen grab from a former and current colleague, Jamie Hand, Danya Sherman, and Megan Bullock of research around creative placemaking, specifically how artists and arts and culture can support equitable community development. And some of the things, I'll share this link later, that are proven, the findings in this research show us that artists can, for example, build collective power, can heal community trauma, can facilitate collaboration, bridge differences, imagine new approaches. I hope those of you who are thinking about from, pilot to policy are leaning into those findings, because I think those are some of the key actions and the key tools and the key skill sets that we need to actually motivate us towards larger movement building, right, and policy change. Artists have a key role to play, I hope. There's research that's right here. I'll share the links. Scale, quickly, I mentioned this before, but important to name again that we're operating statewide. Artists really are in every corner of the state. This map shows us all the folks who applied. The map that has all the folks who are also selected is similarly distributed all across the state. A key, I think an exciting thing that we're able to know because of our program is that artists are in fact in rural places as well. A lot of people have assumed that our program focuses only on New York City or that only artists live in New York City. Not the case whatsoever. We're really excited to be able to demonstrate and have the opportunity to make sense of and analyze data around what this kind of work means for folks in rural places of our country, and specifically rural in the context of New York State. There's lots of other, how do you implement programs at a scale like this? There's a lot more we have to learn, y'all. That's what I'll leave you with, and I want to talk about it. A couple of tidbits. Thinking about over 2,400 participants, we are really serving multiple and overlapping populations, right? So within those 2,400, absolutely, we have folks who are not banked. Absolutely, we have folks who are unhoused. Absolutely, we have undocumented folks. Not to mention, we have disabled folks. Not to mention, we have folks who have SSDI, SSI, SNAP, and more. This has meant the need to rely on really important and expert partners like SteadyUp and Community Financial Resources. I know some folks from CFR are here, so hi, I love you to the end of days, as you know. We've also been able to, from learning from all of you, work with benefits counselors. We found that our participants have found benefits counseling to be by far their most important experience as a part of our program. We've completed over 400 sessions to date. We're working with Henry Street Settlement, as well as Work Without Limits, which I'm happy to share more about in the chat or otherwise. I think more to learn, but operating that many sessions, right, in a short amount of time for this program, there's a lot we could learn and share about that version of scale. Lastly, impacted narrative change, fun word for research. We're not doing a randomized control trial or research on implementation variables like other programs for a few key reasons, in part because of our values. Like, we really believe this works, right? So we're not testing to see if guaranteed income works. We do believe artists are in need right now, have been for some time, and we're lucky to be in a position where we're distributing those funds. In addition, because some of the goal of our program and the research considerations for arts stakeholders that we're centering differ from what an RCT is looking to gather, et cetera. Like I mentioned, our ultimate goal is that artists are better supported both inside and outside of the arts ecosystem. With that in mind, we have 4 sort of initiatives that are bundled under our impacted narrative change work that I hope you all be interested in. The first 2 are maybe structurally similar to things that you all are already doing. For example, process or implementation evaluation. We're excited to capture and learn some of the best practices and pitfalls, of course, related to guaranteed income at this scale, as well as for artists. Y'all know the amazing folks at Yerba Buena Center for the Arts. I think Kevin Dublin, a beautiful artist, has been featured at some of these convenings, et cetera, as well as Springboard for the Arts. Laura Zabel's an old homie from previous work who shared the sort of political stantiations and value system. Can't wait to meet the folks in Ireland. Let's talk about it. Stuff to do. So we're excited to be part of fostering that a collaborative learning community. And then impact evaluation, understanding how direct cash impacts artists' lives, as well as the practice of being an artist. And then the second, these last 2 are, I think, somewhat unique to Creatives Rebuild New York and have the opportunity to have artists at the center of the program. Narrative change, like how do we, this might look like strategic communications, education modules. One might focus on the public understanding of the realities of artists' lives and practices. For example, I think a lot of folks maybe don't know that there are artists who are unhoused, undocumented, et cetera. But we also want to focus on building artists' understanding and awareness of guaranteed income. We learned through this process that most artists who applied to this program have no idea what guaranteed income is. Imagine the possibilities in a few months when all of these 2,400 artists are in a stadium together, maybe not actually together, but I'm just envisioning all these people all in the gymnasium together who believe in the power of this kind of an economic intervention. Advocacy, storytelling, policy change, right? Artists become advocates and allies, hopefully, we hope, right, by experiencing this program. That's base building work to begin with. And we hope that also through this work that artists are reflected in or are understood or a part of other initiatives across the country. Just some stuff about cultural organizing and how the narrative impact and narrative change work we can do. We're excited that it might be a lot of different things and that artists can be at the center, right? There's a long history of cultural organizing and artists as organizers. I'm thinking about the Culture is Power is referencing formerly Culture Strike, now the Center for Cultural Power, and all of the work that they do, thinking about Mayday Space, thinking about the Interference Archive, documenting, archiving, building power. This is what artists do. All the artists I know for sure, which isn't all of them, but quite a bit. The Highlander Center in Tennessee, if any folks are familiar with that organization, right? Honoring, I think it's 90 years celebration is coming up in a couple of months. Those are folks who know that artists and cultural organizing is at the center of how we build movements and make waves of change. Another example that's happening in real time that we're excited to learn from, right? Springboard from the Arts is modeling this work in what they're calling Artists Respond, People, Place, and Prosperity. And these artists are going to be creating public projects that demonstrate the root causes that lead to the need for guaranteed income. So really excited to see what comes of that and excited that CRNY will have the opportunity to model and learn from, and that we have so many artists who we hope will be energized about this work. Talking fast because I know I'm out of time. I hope that if anything, I leave you with ways for us to connect, things for us to discuss. the possibility of having this many artists in support of this kind of a movement. And also that artists, like all of us, are deserving of having our basic needs met. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks all for listening.
Maura, that was awesome. And I think you have time, I would say, for at least one question. You had one in the chat that Max raised. And so that was about the percentage, I believe it was the percentage of artists that you, let me make sure I get the phrasing right. Max, do you want to unmute real quick and ask your question?
Yeah, sure. I was curious what share of applicants you approved as meeting the definition of artists?
That's a great question. And the truth is we're still in process, right? Because we have folks who are in process with us, who are harder to get a hold of, right? Who don't have, are not checking email, are not checking text messages. So I don't have the full number on it, but I think I want to say like over 95%, our definition of artist was really broad purposefully, because we truly believe that, first of all, creativity is a resource to all humans have the capacity to grow and build. And that artists with a capital A, artists with a lowercase a, the more we can do to sort of switch up that class dynamic, the better, right? We want folks who are thinking about, like I mentioned the quilt making example. It's really present to me because I was speaking with a quilt maker in West Virginia recently, but those folks should be considered artists, right, in a program like this, as much as someone who's presented as a gallery or is choreographing dance on Broadway. We want all of those folks to be included, but I'm happy to share more as we move closer to having all of that finalized.
Thanks.
And then I saw one more question in the chat around benefits, and if Creatives Rebuild New York was able to get New York to do any benefits waivers and whatnot. And I think, I know everyone loves this presentation, and we'll have a chance to, you will always have a chance to circle back with Maura in the GICP, but just want to make sure that we can see both our presentations. But that's a great question, Maura. Why don't you take that?
Absolutely. Hi Teju, and hi everybody. We don't have waivers for our program, and we have learned with our benefits counseling partners that a lot of folks, what they're facing, the benefit of the income supersedes the potential loss in benefits. Something else that I hope to talk about with other folks in the future is one thing we're really excited, been hard to figure out, but we think we figured out, is for folks, disabled folks in particular, to move the funds directly into an ABLE account. Has been a huge important thing in upholding disability justice. That's a whole access is a whole really important thing that I hope all of us in this community continue to talk about.
Absolutely. And ABLE accounts, I mean, when they were created, were just such a, of course, still have flaws and everything, but we're such an SSI game changer to that $2,000 kind of rule, even though I think there's still so much more work for them. But that's an excellent example of that. Thank you so much, Maura. You have so many virtual applause emojis in that chat. You should look at them, and great words. Thank you so much for being here with us.